The First World War, one of the most deadly conflicts in history. A new automated era of fighting and killing. For the first time in history, death comes en masse. It forges the personalities of young men who will later shape the fate of Europe. And prepares the ground for a second, even deadlier conflict. How would history have played out had it not been for the killing fields of the First World War? Berlin, 1914. No sign yet of the nightmare that lies ahead. Alexanderplatz, even livelier than today. Cameras are still a novelty. They stare straight at us, full of curiosity, no trace of the worries to come. This is the pulsating capital of the aspiring German Empire. Foreign soldiers haven't set foot on German soil since Napoleon. These people don't know what war really means, at least not yet. These are modern times. The automobile is met with exuberant enthusiasm right across the Western world. Speed is the drug of the time. The smell of petrol is a favorite perfume.
For the bulk of Europe, the beginning of the 20th century, you could look back on a century of astonishing peace and prosperity and look optimistically at the new century that was just beginning.
Germany is the second strongest industrial power in the world, right after the USA, and it is armed to the teeth. Life is good. In his memoirs, the author Karl Zuckmayer writes, "People felt safe in a world of progress, civilization and humanitarianism. Nobody saw the approaching storm." Munich, 1914. The Bavarian king's homely residential city. This is where a 25-year-old Austrian has found shelter. Adolf Hitler. His future prospects are not encouraging. With no qualifications, he's making a meager living by copying cityscapes. He's in Munich to escape Austrian military service. Even then, Hitler is filled with hatred for people of different ethnicities.
Well, Hitler had been a big supporter of German nationalism. He'd hated the Kaiser und Kaiser monarchy in Austria. He didn't like this mixed race empire and with this Völkergemischens in Central Europe. He saw his future as being with Germany, who wouldn't never wanted to fight in the Austrian army.
Meanwhile, Hitler's future adversary, Bernard Montgomery, lives in London, the capital of the world and the heart of the vast British Empire, where the sun never sets. It's the 3rd of June, 1914. Trooping the colour to honour the birthday of the British King George V. "26-year-old Bernard Montgomery, affectionately known as Monty, has just returned from the Indian colonies. Now he's leading the comfortable, if a little boring, life of a British officer. Engagements in high society, but hardly any real challenges.
It was almost like a club. And the idea was that if you behaved well and you would be promoted, and as long as you were a good administrator of the natives in the colonies, you would do very well, and you might end up your career as Sir Bernard Montgomery.
This is the fading glitz of the old feudal Europe. Most of its rulers are related. The British king is in Berlin, visiting his cousin, the German Emperor Wilhelm II. They've exchanged uniforms as a sign of their bond. The occasion is the wedding of the Emperor's daughter, Victoria. Wilhelm's other cousin, the Russian Tsar, Nicholas, has also come. For now, there are only gun salutes. The 28th of June 1914 is a wonderful summer's day. But the day's headlines are full of doom. The Austrian heir to the throne and his wife have been murdered. They're shot by Serbian nationalists during a visit to Sarajevo. This assassination is the spark that sets off the First World War. But hardly anyone is taking any notice.
It wasn't immediately thought of that this is now going to be, this is the start of a major conflagration in Europe. And the English politician, or a British politician rather, Lord George said later on that the European nations, I think the phrase was, slithered over the edge into the cauldron of war.
To be honest, the news of Franz Ferdinand's death didn't cause any deep feelings of sympathy.
Comments the Austrian writer Stefan Zweig. The people are enjoying the holidays at the Wannsee, just as at the Baltic Sea, the bathtub of Berlin. This is the summer in which Europe commits suicide. A children's party in Gaggenau in Swabia. How many of these small children will later fall victim to the Second World War? How many of these girls will become war widows? Horse racing at Ludwigslust. The ladies of Mecklenburg high society are showing off their finest wardrobe. And again, children playing up for the camera. Worry-free and full of mischief. But these are the last jovial hours of an entire era. Just like every summer, the German Kaiser also goes on holiday to Norway on his yacht Hohenzollern. Meanwhile, his politicians and generals are navigating straight into a catastrophe. But they're not alone.
For a very long time, historical research was concentrated on Germany when we discussed the outbreak of the First World War in summer 1914. We now, I think, have moved away from that concentration on Germany, and we know now that it was with the responsibility of all great powers, almost all great powers. All great powers contributed to the outbreak of the First World War, and we now know that in every capital of Europe, the general staffs, the prime ministers, the monarchs were playing with fire.
But the Central Powers of Germany and Austro-Hungary are the first to cross the red line. 4 weeks after the assassination in Sarajevo, Austria declares war on Serbia. As a result, Serbia's ally Russia begins to mobilize. To preempt an attack, Germany now declares war on Russia, and 2 days later, also on the Russian ally France. The die has been cast.
They all thought this would be an easy war, quickly won, over within a very short time, and everything will go on, and there'd be a sort of cleansing effect through this war. There's a curious notion that this idea that war would have a cleansing effect on Europe.
Germany's declaration of war on Russia comes on the 1st of August 1914. It's a fateful day. The Emperor addresses his people,